My name is Carlos Almendarez. I had a pretty long history with BACR. It started as a volunteer, actually. I went to undergrad at UC Berkeley, and while I was a student, I volunteered in a youth mentoring program called YSP, Youth Support Program. And so it was a BACR program that mentored and tutored local middle school students. And that's where it was run by Marisa Raya, who I believe is now like the head of after school for all of BACR or for East Bay. So that's how I met her, and I was part of that program for 3 years. And when I graduated, I was really inspired by that YSP program, and that's what kind of started me along the path of youth development, after school programs. And my next job after that was at San Rafael High School. It was a BACR after school program, and it's not just after school, it provided college counseling, mental health services, just all around youth development. I was in San Rafael, and we served mostly students from the Canal neighborhood of San Rafael. It was a great program. I felt very much at home. A lot of the students were newcomers to this country, and I was born in the United States, but I was born in Los Angeles, and English was my second language. My mother immigrated to this country from El Salvador, and I was learning English in school, so I definitely kind of related a lot to the students that I was working with. So I did that for 2 years, from 2004 to 2006, and then my supervisor at the time, Don Blasky, approached me with an opportunity to try to develop more after-school programs in San Francisco. At the time, BACR, I believe, only had 1 or 2 fiscal sponsor after-school programs here in San Francisco. And sort of my job was to kind of grow BACR's presence in after-school programs within San Francisco Unified School District. So I did that for, I think, another 6 to 8 years. And I think by the time I left, there were 18 full-fledged after-school programs that BACR ran in San Francisco. That was the last position I had with BACR. So I went from volunteer to kind of site-based program to a manager with 18 site coordinators, a lot of program staff, AmeriCorps. It was a pretty large program. And during that time, I also was working with Marisa. She was the head of all after-school programs. So it was really nice to kind of go full circle from being kind of a volunteer to being her colleague. And my job at San Rafael High School, in sort of retrospect, I think was one of my favorite jobs that I've had. I think in large part that was because I was at the school. So the job that I had was to build relationships with the students, with the families. And later I really enjoyed the work that I did as a program manager, but I was one step removed from like the students and families. And the thing that I most enjoyed about being at the high school was that I could see my students graduate, I could see them go to college or go to work or go to a junior college, whatever it may be. I could see what the next step was. And even now, I still keep in touch with some of the students from San Rafael High School. I've been to some of their weddings. They now have families. They're full-fledged adults. So I've enjoyed like the relationships. As a program manager, I didn't have that because you're one step removed. Like, you're developing programs, you might be writing grants, you're doing compliance, you're doing hiring, all very important things, but it's not you're not building those relationships the way that you would like at an actual school. So I think I think at its core, the after school work that BACR does, that we did, is about this kind of one-on-one relationships with like families. I think I consider myself a very reflective person, and I think the job that I had, with the time that I spent with BACR, influenced my life in many different ways. I guess I'll start kind of from present and going back. I have a daughter who's in kindergarten who just started in San Francisco Unified School District. And the skills that I had running after school programs here in San Francisco and elsewhere, I've used in kind of my role volunteering as part of the PTA. I've used in trying to help the school get resources. So when the school has certain needs, I can step up and say, I think I can help you with that. I know how to do that. Whether it's through grant writing, whether it's through asking people in the school district, if they can help or if they can point us to certain resources. My time at BACR helped me with that. And then in my current role, I'm an attorney for the city of San Francisco. And, our office advises different departments within the city. And one of the departments that I advised was the Department of Children, Youth, and Families. And the Department of Children, Youth, and Families, or DCYF, funds a lot of the programs in San Francisco. So my time at BACR allowed me to actually do my current job better because I actually knew how that funding process worked and how those relationships worked with DCYF and the different nonprofit organizations. So I just kind of by coincidence, it helped me with that particular part of my job. But I think kind of on a more basic level, so much of what I did at BACR, especially as a program manager. So kind of going back, I went from being at a high school and having one-on-one relationships with parents and families to then my program manager job was really establishing relationships with the school district, with the different principals at all the schools that we worked at and other schools that we were trying to sort of get. Relationship building. I think no matter where you go, that is an important skill set to have. And I think that my time at BACR really helped me develop that because we were going out from 0 after school programs in San Francisco to 18 when I left. Like it was about talking to principals about BACR's programs and the strengths of our programs and going out and touring other sites, whether it's in San Francisco or in the East Bay or in Marin. And it was really about establishing connections with principals and school district staff. And I think, that was one of the things I really did enjoy was making those relationships. And I still talk to a lot of those folks, whether from BACR or at the school district. We're still friends, we still keep in touch. It was a really great experience. And I think that the skill sets that you learn, like in the moment, don't seem like they're going to be helpful in the future. But now, like future me looks back and was like, oh, like that was something that I learned during my time at BACR. How to work with people, how to make connections, how to talk about certain situations in a positive way. Even when things are negative, like, you learn to talk about things in a very positive way because people are looking at you. You are the leader. I think that's something that, especially now as a lawyer, we are often delivering bad news. If you can somehow speak about it in a positive way, that's a very helpful skill set to have. When I was doing hiring for site coordinators, I was looking for site coordinators that had some kind of experience or life experience or work experience where I thought that they would fit in well with the community that they were in. So, at the time it was San Francisco. So, if somebody had lived or worked in a particular community, I was like, hey, that's going to help. Like the parents are going to be able to buy into this person. They're going to like this person. They're going to kind of essentially follow this individual. And so even if you don't have connections, like I was looking for something where I would see a group of students liking this person and following them. And so I kind of thought about my time at San Rafael High School. The students primarily were Latino newcomer students to the United States. They didn't speak much English. They were predominantly spoke Spanish. And one of the things that I'm a lifelong soccer player. And what I would do is I would go play soccer with them at lunch. And that was sort of my way. I wasn't from Marin. I'm not from the Bay Area. But I am Latino and I speak Spanish and I like soccer. So I would go out and play soccer with my students. And, that helped them kind of trust me and it helped those students like, oh, you know what, like he's cool, like I'll come to the tutoring program. If he says like, hey, like, you know, go talk to this counselor, like they're more willing to trust you because they know you, they know that you're somewhat like them. So yeah, I think that is a very valuable experience, and I think that does also carry on into, you know, your, like for me, a work as a lawyer. Like people often trust people that are like them, that have similar experiences, whether you went to the same college, whether you live in the same neighborhood, whether you have the same hobbies, whether you know the same people. Yeah, so I think, you know, as humans, we're always trying to like find commonality with each other, and that's something that I learned at BACR kind of in my time, both as a volunteer. I was trying to do the same thing with my, you know, when I first started BACR as a volunteer, I was trying to like connect with my mentee, and my mentee was a soccer player, so like that's how we connected. Yeah, so I think I've always kind of taken that experience and applied it to, you know, the work that I do with BACR, but also the work that I do now is like, how do we connect, you know, with other human beings? Just having experiences with the students at Centerville High School, and again, being a part of their lives, where like they graduated, but I would go to their weddings. I've seen, you know, they have kids, they have families. I think that's been really kind of something that I really enjoy. You know, it's not something that you have in many other jobs where you can influence someone's life and then like, you know, you're still a part of their life. They thank you. You know, definitely, you know, as a lawyer, like, you know, people aren't coming back to say, oh, thank you, and you're invited to my wedding, and you're seeing sort of what my life path is. It's, you know, that's not, you know, what this particular career is. So yeah, I think there is something very unique to, you know, being sort of in the youth development industry, where, you know, you are kind of changing lives and influencing, you know, young minds. So yeah, I think that all those examples of different people whose lives I've been a part of is something that's a very fond memory that I have. You know, one of my favorite things about BACR are the people. And, you know, I always remember going to the like annual staff meetings, and the people of BACR are special. And, you know, and I definitely would agree with that. My, you know, first supervisor at BACR was Don Blasky, who is now retired as of, I think, very recently. But, you know, even though I haven't been with BACR for, I think I left in 2013. Yeah, so I left BACR in 2013. I've stayed in touch with Don Blasky, you know, even though I've been in Los Angeles. Yeah, we've met up, and he's always been a great mentor to me, both now and while I was at BACR. You know, he is, you know, one of my favorite supervisors. He always was very trusting. He kind of led by example, and, you know, sometimes situations were complicated and heated, and I think because of his background as a counselor, like a mental health professional, you know, he was always very level-headed, and that was one thing that I was always trying to like mimic or kind of follow his lead. When I saw him kind of lead in meetings, was like, oh, like you have to be level-headed and also respectful. You know, oftentimes people were, you know, kind of disrespectful in their language, or like things got very heated in certain meetings. But, you know, Don was always very respectful and very calm, and so that's one thing that I've always kind of strived to kind of like what would Don do? What would somebody who's a counselor, or, you know, mental health professional, you know, how would they enter this situation? Yeah, so I try to keep my calm and keep a level head. But yeah, Don has been, you know, around for many years, and I learned a lot from how we treated people, budgeting, grant writing. He did it all. And, you know, at the time I was like really kind of aspiring to be Don. Like, you know, one day, you know, I can be Don. I can, you know, hope to be, you know, someone like that can, you know, has so many different skill sets for the organization. So that's kind of, at the time, is what I was, yeah, I was trying to learn from him. And yeah, he's been very influential in my life. Yeah, my current title is I'm a deputy city attorney with the city and county of San Francisco. And what the city attorney's office does is we are the law firm for the city and county of San Francisco. So every single department within the city comes to our office for advice. I am on the labor and employment team. So we deal with any kind of labor and employment matters that deal with city employees. And so the city of San Francisco has 35,000 plus employees. It's the largest employer in the city and county of San Francisco by far. So any sort of issue that comes up related to someone's employment, like we advise on that. So every single department you can think of, the big ones being like fire, police, muni, public works, things like that. We advise on that. We also advise on the contracts for all public employees. So every couple of years, contracts get renegotiated for all of the employees, and we advise on both the contract language, but also once the contract has been signed, if there are any questions about the interpretation of contract, we're involved in that. We also defend lawsuits, people that sue the city. We defend the city. We're involved in mediations and arbitrations, where people have questions about how the contract should be interpreted. And so, that's what I do now. And then the skill set, I think everything we do ultimately is about relationships and people. And so, I think the skills that I had, kind of, again, building relationships and trying to kind of find consensus helped me in my job, especially for something like if you're talking about you're trying to reach a settlement or there's a mediation. Two different parties want two different things, and you want to try to get to like a middle point. And so I find that, especially compared to other people who have had different careers, like I think my approach is a little bit different. I consider myself less combative, and I try to be more of a like consensus builder. I try to be more, I'm at my core, I'm an advocate, but I try to be someone who's just ultimately trying to reach an agreement. And so I think part of that is a part of my, time in education and youth development. It's like, I don't think that argument for the sake of argument like really gets you anywhere. Ultimately, people are trying to resolve a situation. And, whether you are resolving a conflict between elementary school students on the playground or high school students on the playground and like a bunch of fancy lawyers in a courtroom or like in arbitration, like I think it's all kind of the same thing. Like that you are ultimately trying to just resolve the situation. And you can like pour gas on the fire and like be combative, or you can like just try to figure out, what's driving both sides and try to like reach some kind of deal. And sometimes we reach a deal and sometimes we don't. But usually generally my goal is to try to, reach some kind of compromise in a way that, both parties kind of feel that they won something. One of the things that I really enjoyed about my time at BACR was the opportunity for career progression. I think the organization has grown so much. I think there are a lot more opportunities now than there were when I was with BACR. So I went from a volunteer to a site coordinator to a program manager, and who knows where I would have gone had I stayed. So I think whether you stay within the organization and you promote, or you take those skills and go somewhere else. I think the skill set that you can develop at BACR is very helpful. And certainly whether you don't even have to stay within like after school. Like one of my colleagues who ran the after school programs with me in San Francisco now works for San Francisco Unified School District. Like, I actually ran into him at lunch like a couple of weeks ago. He was a really great also program manager with me in San Francisco, and now he's doing great work in San Francisco. And I've over time run into people that I used to work with, they're all doing kind of similarly great work. So I think what I would say is, if you stay within the organization, you can promote, but also, if you don't, like, that's okay. Like, you can use the skill sets that you have elsewhere. And I think, yeah, that's definitely doable. Ultimately, it comes down to people, it comes down to relationships. And like, if you are, kind of genuine about that, and, yeah, I think that's a skill set that is hard to replicate and comes in very helpful in like many other industries. I think the best advice I could give a group of current BACR employees is just enjoy your time here now. Like, do the best that you can. And you never, I went from, again, like a volunteer to a site coordinator to a program manager. Like, I never thought when I was a volunteer that I would come back as an employee. When I was a site coordinator, I never thought that I would be running 18 programs in San Francisco. Eventually, like, I just tried. Well, I think my personality is I always try to give everything 100%. And, as a volunteer, I gave it 100%. As a site coordinator at the high school, I gave it 100%. And I think that's what got me to that next step of, being a program manager. And so, yeah, I think, again, it wasn't, even though I am a competitive person, I'm like a lifelong kind of athlete and competitive person, like, in the context of like youth development and like working at a nonprofit, I ultimately just wanted to do the best for the community that I was working in and with. And so I was competitive about that I wanted to do like the best for my community that I was working in or a part of. And so, yeah, I think, that would be my recommendation, is like, that you have to be kind of in it. And, I could always tell, when I worked with people, like, I could tell the people that were genuinely there and like enjoyed the work, and then people that, maybe this was just a job for them. So I think that the people that I know that are still with the organization, and there's a lot of people in BACR that have been along for many decades, right? This is their career. They've been with the organization for, a long period of time. Like, they are people that, like, they care about this work, and this is what they're about. So I would say, like, yeah, I think you have to figure out which category you're in. But I think if you are someone that like is genuinely, you believe in the mission, you believe in the work, and you believe in being a part of a community, then I think BACR is a great place. And I think that kind of passion translates into other types of work. Like, people always want to work with people that are like, kind of in it to win it, that are a part of whatever it is that you're doing, whether you're, any kind of work that you do. So, yeah, I think just kind of believe in what you're doing and have passion for what you're doing. I think you'll do well. I think the people that I know that I admire as leaders are, I think we were talking about this earlier, like, are willing to step up. There are definitely people that have the skill set to be able to help, and for whatever reason they don't. But I think, the leaders that I admire, like, are always stepping in. And that's how I see myself, is like, everywhere that I've ever been, like, if I can help, like, I will. Whether that's in my time at BACR, whether it's in my time as an attorney, whether it's, at my daughter's PTA, like, I want to help, I want to step up. Right? And that's also what I'll look for when I was hiring people. It's like, who are these people that are, leaders that, they're not doing it because they want attention. They're doing it because they want to contribute to a program, to their community in some way. So yeah, I think it's important, if you can help, you should help. And I've always admired folks that kind of step up.